Hello and welcome back to the Holistically Awakened podcast, your one-stop destination for all things health and a kick-ass life. I'm Laurence, a certified nutritional practitioner and health coach, and your host of the Holistically Awakened podcast. This is your show to learn from me and inspiring experts on how to up-level in all aspects of your life, including health, wealth, relationships, spirituality, and business, so you can live your very best life as your highest potential. No BS policy. This podcast is about awakening to the truth and talking about what really needs to happen to make your life what you want it to be, whatever that may look like. Please note this podcast is for informational purposes only. It is not intended as medical advice. Please consult with your medical provider or practitioner for your own needs and to assess what is best for you. Before we dive into this episode about the healthcare system with Lisa, I wanted to share that I have opened 3 spots to mentor women with PCOS in my brand new program, Elevate You. So if you're sick of the conventional route, you've tried everything, you don't know where to start, or maybe you know you're meant to thrive in your life, you just don't really know what to do next, what's the next step. You're Googling things, you're trying all the things, nothing's working, you're not feeling better, and you want to know how to go about managing your PCOS holistically, then this is for you. Now, this isn't your typical PCOS or health program. So it's not just about the food or the movement or even the stress management. All of these are really important. All of these are addressed, but it's also going to be so important to address our inner state. And this is where we fuse all of the holistic modalities together to address the root cause to why you're stuck, why you're not feeling better, and to really help you move forward in claiming the life that you really want to live. And this is going to involve looking at your core beliefs, your identity, your thoughts, and it's only after we address these that our behaviors can actually really change and that we can shift into this new way of living, this new identity, this new life. And so in order to do the action steps to live a healthy life and continue to make these behaviors sustainable, we first need to address and adopt a new identity. So in Elevate You, we focus on epigenetics, what we can control in order to embody what we really want in our lives and create this health and vitality in our bodies that we really are craving. So when we address the root cause to why your PCOS is acting out and showing you how to manage it holistically while stepping into a new identity of yourself, this is real health, and this is where you can start to thrive. So it's not enough by just addressing one piece of the puzzle. We need to address all of them together. So this holistic program combines all modalities of holistic health, mind, body, soul, so you can understand PCOS, understand your body, and receive tangible tools that make a difference to be able to eventually reverse your symptoms and stop holding yourself back from living the life that you truly desire, stepping into the person that you are meant to be. So this is a 4-month program. My programs are minimum 4 months. Why is that? Because I want results for you. Simple as that. I don't want a quick fix plan for you to follow for a few weeks and then abandon. I want true lasting change for you. And this program is about stepping into this new way of living, this new self, so that you can continue to feel like this and make progress over and over and over again over the years to come. So if you're curious, if you want to learn more, I will put the link in the show notes to check out the program as well as the application form. This is by application only because this is a commitment. This is not, again, a quick fix plan. This is about showing up and doing the work. And I do have 3 spots that are open. So I'd love to hear from you. If you're curious about learning more, we can always hop on a call and I can answer any questions that you have. Lisa is a clinical nutritionist, functional medicine writer, and natural medicine advocate. She believes that knowledge is the first step to empowerment, and she's the co-founder of an online education platform, Fiore Health. Lisa runs an online clinical nutrition practice where she educates clients, provides them with their full spectrum of options, and empowers clients to take charge of their health. In addition, she also creates content for various nutraceutical companies. Lisa is currently living in Mexico as a digital nomad, and when she's not busy working, you can find her running, hiking, camping, and traveling the world to learn all that she can from local cultures about natural medicine. So welcome, Lisa, onto the podcast today. Super excited to have you here with me.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here.
And I can't wait to dive into this topic with you. There's a lot that we're going to go through, but I first of all would love for you to kind of introduce yourself to the listeners, and I always like to know like what brought you to this field of work that you're in, because pretty much 9 times out of 10, there's always been some sort of experience for people that brought them into like holistic health, or like, some sort of traumatic experience or like illness or whatever. So I'm wondering, were you always, in this field, or did you shift? How did that look like for you?
Yeah, to be honest, I am not really sure how I ended up in this nutrition functional medicine field. I kind of just organically ended up here. I studied kinesiology for my undergrad, and it's very conventional. And when I started that, to be honest, I applied on a whim sitting on my couch because I thought, I like health, I like sports, I might as well go to university for something along those lines. And then I found IHN, the school that I went to, I think honestly, like on a random computer search. I have no idea. And something just clicked, and I thought that's what I needed to do. And so I went in, and then since then, my career has just kind of really organically unfolded through people that I've met, and I've discovered this passion for alternative medicine that I'm not really sure where it stems from, but it's so large that I'm assuming that this is just what I was born to do, and life just kind of led me here.
Yep, totally. I definitely see you kind of like following your intuition and your gut, and it's been leading you to beautiful places like Mexico. So,
Yeah.
and so I know that you've been talking and looking into a lot more like research in terms of like even what's going on right now with like the conventional approach, the alternative approach, and what kind of brought you to looking into that more? Because obviously this is what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah. So again, just very organically, just the people that I've been meeting, whether that is clients or in my professional life mentors and whatnot, I've just been introduced to this world of natural medicine and kind of almost the politics of it. And I just am seeing so many people who are kind of, I want to say, fed up with the conventional medical system because they're just not getting results. And typically the clients that I see are really ill, and they've been to like specialist and specialist and specialist, and just nothing is working. And I see them and their quality of life. And so I, yeah, just kind of really got into the nitty gritty of it all through that. And then a lot of my mentors are also in this world who kind of pushed me along this more like advocacy path versus yeah, just kind of like taking my back seat and like seeing my clients here and there. You know what I mean?
Totally. And so I'd love for you to kind of explain to our listeners, just so that we're all on the same page, what is conventional versus the alternative medical approach?
Yeah, so typically the conventional medical approach is what I guess your very typical medicine, where you go to the doctor, you have your 15-minute consultation, your yearly physical, you get your blood work done, see what's happening. Maybe you go in with symptoms, they match the symptoms, give you medication. It's very like lock and key kind of model. Whereas the alternative medicine, from my perspective, is just more holistic. We kind of go in and we look at the root cause of what is happening. And we don't just look at a blood work panel and say you're healthy. We kind of dig into, how are you feeling about life? What does your body feel like? What are your energy levels like? So to me, the conventional medicine is just kind of the surface and symptom based, whereas alternative is more holistic and deeper. And its goal is to make you have this like wonderful, full, healthy life.
Yeah. And obviously, I see this all the time with my clients too, like especially with, I specialize in PCOS, and a lot of women will come up and they'll be like, I'm just so sick of being told, take this pill, and then when you want to get pregnant, have kids, then we'll deal with that later, and then we'll like do another pill or whatever it is, whatever treatment it is. And then it's almost kind of like, we'll deal with that later when it's an issue. And I think that's also one of the issues with like conventional lab tests too, because we're only looking at like disease, whereas the alternative approach is looking at markers that are more specific and what's the word, less like broad, so that you can actually catch the illness way before and prevent it, right?
Absolutely. And, when you were talking about we'll fix this now and deal with this down the line, that also doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, because for me with clients, I like to figure out, what's going on, and then just fix everything and start putting, a plan into action that in the short term helps, but also it's helping them to sustain long-term health and hit their goals down the line, whether that is conceiving or, preventing X, Y, and Z. And so I think, yeah, again, the conventional model is just very pinpointed, whereas the alternative model is much broader.
Yeah, and I think that one of the big things that we need to understand, and I mean, I would love to see a shift in the medical system one day with this, is like the obviously the holistic approach in the alternative medical system, but then when we are looking at the conventional system, we have specialists for each like organ system, and it's like, well, if you have a problem with this symptom, then it's that organ and it has nothing to do with like another organ or like your whole body. But like, even I remember I was talking to a gynecologist, and kind of talking about, obviously reproductive health and all of that, women's health, and she was kind of saying like, oh yeah, gut health has nothing to do with like gynecological health. And I was just like, just biting my tongue, and I was like, okay, I'm not going to say anything, but it's really frustrating, because we can't just be like, okay, this organ is by itself and it doesn't communicate to any other organs, or like the body has nothing to, like another system in the body has nothing to do with it. Like, we cannot look through that lens anymore.
I 100% agree. It's such a bizarre concept to me that the body is separated into all of these individual components when, even from a very basic hormonal standpoint, we know that every system in the body communicates to each other. And we know that everything influences every other organ system. And so to look at it in a segregated manner is just basically setting things up for failure before you even begin.
Mm-hmm. And so I know that there are definitely some practices that exist out there that are merging more of the conventional approach than the alternative, because this isn't just to bash like conventional medicine. Obviously, this is not what we're doing here, but we do recognize that, more of the acute instances, the emergency situations, that is where the conventional system is bang on. Like, we need them. They are so good at that. But when it comes to chronic disease, we're not so good at that with the conventional medical system. And so, in my opinion, I think, and there are definitely, clinics or practices out there who do this, about merging the two so that we have each person in their own specialty, and we're using the holistic approach at the same time for things like lifestyle and diet, that we could actually manage different like chronic diseases and things like that. So for you, why do you think there is so much resistance, in your opinion, about merging these two? Because I think they would work very well together, just as long as we know like what we're good at. You know what I mean?
100%. And yeah, like you said, this isn't to bash conventional medicine. It has its place. It is needed. It's just that we need to have a more integrated approach, and we need to be working with each other. It has to be a two-way street. And I think in the alternative sphere, we're really good at working with each other. For example, nutritionists and naturopaths, we go back and forth all of the time. A nutritionist understands the importance of spinal health for whole body health. So, we refer to chiropractors and physios, and, we've got this really great community of interdisciplinary practitioners. And then we have conventional medicine that just kind of sits on the side. It's like, the kid that doesn't want to go play with the rest of the group. And you're just kind of like, all right. And I don't really know where that stems from, but what I see is, from the alternative side, we have no aversion to working with conventional medicine. We're pro working with conventional medicine. And yeah, conventional medicine is really great at the acute stuff, whether that's a car accident or somebody has an infection, like an acute infection. Of course, you want to go to a medical doctor and get that resolved. In the conventional community, there seems to be an aversion to working with alternative practitioners, and not only an aversion, but they discredit pretty much everything that we stand for and that we do, because it doesn't fit into the lens or the framework that they were taught. And I'm unsure why, to be honest, but from my observations, because within alternative medicine, you have many branches. You can have Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, you have chiropractor. I would say even physio is a form of alternative medicine. You have aromatherapy, herbalism, nutrition, it's all encompassing. And since we're really good at working together, I just find it a little bit confusing that the conventional medical system wants no part of it. And even say I have clients who get better, they go back to their medical doctors, and their medical doctors basically discount their experience, saying that, oh, well, you must not have had this, or maybe something was a misdiagnosis or something was wrong, because it's not possible for you to get better. So I think there
Mm,
just needs to be a shift in the conventional mindset, and that needs to start from the education in medical school, that there are other options, and yes, we all need to play into our strengths.
100%. So many things I want to say from this, but definitely like in my opinion too, I think the smartest thing, obviously if you like got hit by a bus or like you have like bleeding or whatever, like go to the emergency room. Like we're not going to look at this like, okay, let's do energy healing on you. Like no,
Yeah,
just
we're not
you
gonna
need to go to the emergency room.
focus on that.
Yeah, so obviously in those situations, but in terms of like, more chronic illness, which is the main focus of our talk here today, I really think that holistic approach, whatever that is, because you mentioned a lot of those, there are so many out there, should really be the first thing addressed. And then if we're still like, okay, which usually doesn't happen, but if we're still like, okay, something's still not right, or we need to do something like, I don't know, a procedure, whether it's surgery or whatever, then you go to the conventional approach. And for the most part, it's the opposite. And that is really not serving anyone. And I think that's also why we're seeing a lot of frustration out there, and then we're seeing people come to us and be like, tried everything and it's not working. Where I think it would be so much better if we actually did the opposite.
Exactly. I agree with that 100%. And I always think of, the conventional versus alternative as the conventional system is not a healthcare system. The conventional system is a disease care system. There's no getting around that. You don't go for health. You go there to mask the symptoms. And a lot of the times, like you were saying, it goes backwards. People are going to the doctor, they get shuttled around from doctor to doctor, specialist to specialist, and they spend a lot of time, and some people can spend years feeling really bad or getting unnecessary surgeries. And whereas, yeah, if people would come to the convention or the alternative side first, we can work together with conventional, because not all pharmaceuticals are bad all of the time. Sometimes in the interim, a pharmaceutical is going to help that person get to a certain place where then they can start to feel better, wean off, and incorporate habits into their life. But as it stands right now, the preventative health side of conventional medicine is very poor, and I would argue that it doesn't even exist.
And I like that you also, well, you mentioned a little while back about like how we kind of brush off, or even a lot of the time I hear my, clients come to me, or just, people come to me and say, well, I was told take this and you'll have to take this for the rest of your life, and you just have to deal with this for the rest of your life, and this is like normal, quote unquote, it's part of aging, blah blah blah. And I've even heard things like even like hormonal imbalances, or like all sorts of things that you can definitely manage holistically that have nothing to do, quote unquote, with your diet. Like diet won't change that, which is just crazy, because we become what we eat, really what we absorb. But when we think about, the medical system and schooling, they only have a few hours of nutrition. So at the end of the day, there isn't really much education on that, which is really unfortunate. But for me, I just see, which is also why I've started to incorporate more of like mindset work in my practice, is that your state of being, your beliefs, and how you, think about yourself and your illness and your beliefs around that, and your ability to heal, is going to play a tremendous impact on your ability to heal and, feel healthy and be vibrant. So I think it's such a disservice and frankly quite unprofessional to start telling people, well, there's nothing you can do, just keep, take this pill for the rest of your life, like nothing's going to change, that kind of thing. And people are just so distraught and discouraged and unmotivated, and that can also lead to mental health problems where they have to, take other pharmaceuticals because of depression or things like that. So we really need to be careful with our words as well. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, I could speak so much on this. First of all, with the nutrition piece, it's quite crazy, because in every natural medicine, or I guess cultural medicine, from way back in the day, nutrition is such a vital component of them all. The Western model of medicine is the only model that does not take nutrition into consideration. So, I'll just leave that for people to kind of think about on their own. And then, yes, you're right. When people are told that, this is what's wrong with you, there's nothing you can do about it, but take this pharmaceutical, it's really disempowering. And I think that in itself can, cause a lot of mental health problems. And yeah, once you go on one pharmaceutical, it's kind of a cascade down this rabbit hole, where you are just kind of on them for life, and you have to, mitigate side effects with other ones. And I think, I hesitate to say this, but I believe that when you see somebody, you assess their situation, you take their symptoms, and you write them a prescription. That is 100% lazy medicine. It's irresponsible, and it really doesn't have to be that way. And I'm not sure how we've got to this point where a prescription pad is what dictates your future.
And the thing I think is that's difficult as well is that, well, first of all, the education, and then we really don't have a lot of time with our doctor. So we have to like present maybe one symptom, and then they have a toolbox of, okay, you have this symptom, take this drug kind of thing. We're going to talk a little bit more about like the pharmaceutical industry as well, because that's a big influence. But the first thing that popped into my mind when you said that was just whack-a-mole. Because it's kind of like one symptom comes up and then you take one pharmaceutical. And then, pharmaceuticals can have side effects and all of that. So then they have another symptom that comes up and then we take another one. It's just kind of like whack-a-mole that just like came into my head. And I think that's like the perfect kind of description of what it really looks like, to be honest.
100%. I think so. And, when you're prescribing pharmaceuticals based on a symptom model of disease, you're not taking into account, like, how did that person get the disease? Just because two people present with diabetes doesn't mean they arrived at that destination the same way. There's many roads that people can take, and they don't take into account, their mental state, the environment which they grew up in, if we really want to get into it, past traumas and all of these things that we know from research and honestly just intuitively being human contribute to pathological processes.
And I'd love for you to get into a little bit about like, you're talking about like the disease care system and the healthcare system, and why really chronic disease is a business because of things like, big pharma and the approach of basically seeing like the alternative healthcare system where it's kind of like, we don't want to see you again. Like, please don't come back because we want you to be better and heal and actually like feel amazing in your body. Whereas a conventional system, unfortunately, it does keep you coming back for more, right?
Yes, and to speak to that, in the alternative world, we always say if we're doing our job correctly, we should not keep seeing you,
Mm-hmm.
and you should be a repeat patient. Whereas conventional medicine, you're always going to fill your prescriptions and what have you. And yes, so to talk on that as chronic disease as a business, which I feel as though is not a common thought, especially those who do suffer from chronic disease. You like to think that your healthcare provider or your medical system has your best interests in mind, but at the end of the day, the pharmaceutical industry is a $1.2 trillion industry, and so that's a lot of money, and it's just projected to keep skyrocketing over the next few years. I think the newest stat is it's going to be a $1.5 trillion industry by 2023. And so sick people are good for the economy. And I mean, you can talk about healthcare costs and like what that does to countries and stuff, but at the end of the day, the pharmaceutical industry brings a crap ton of money. For lack of more professional word.
Yes, that's the unfortunate reality. But then I think, well, we're going to talk a little bit about, what we can do, but we really need to be aware and take our health into our own hands, because a lot of the time we can almost feel like we have to worship our doctor or, distrust ourselves. Or if somebody says, that's normal, your labs are fine. I love that one. Your labs are fine. You're fine. And you feel like shit. You can't wake up in the morning. You have zero energy. You have like painful periods. You might not have a period, like whatever it is, brain fog, cravings. Like these are symptoms of imbalance, because we are meant to thrive and be healthy. That is our innate state. And if we don't feel really good in our bodies, something is wrong. So we always need to like stand up for ourselves, because just because a lab work says that you are fine, quote unquote, that is not the holy grail. Like that's not going to give you all the answers either.
No, those
um
values are pretty arbitrary, you know.
yeah, we
Like
have to remember that.
pathological diagnosis doesn't mean something's not wrong and that you're not going to arrive at that diagnosis 2 years down the line because you didn't fix what was happening.
Yeah, and then a lot of the time we also see a lot of incomplete lab markers that are asked for, and then obviously the ranges will be out of range. I see this all the time with thyroid. And then we can't also test everything in the blood either. So we always have to be mindful of that as well. Like blood tests can be great, but they're not going to give you all the answers either.
Exactly. They're like a great jumping off point, but then a good practitioner should be able to look at a comprehensive lab panel, not just like your regular blood panel, and, start putting the pieces together. And that's why in alternative medicine, our consultations are well over an hour, because we look at everything. We chat, we get an entire picture of the person to, like a detective, put the pieces together and see what's actually going on internally.
And so I'd love to kind of jump into more of like the natural medicine, because we talked a lot about the conventional approach and, what is missing here. But a lot of the time I see a lot of patients, or even people ask me, what is the thing that will fix this? Like, what diet should I do? What pill should I take? And we really need to remember that, especially if we've been, feeling ill, we've been living an unhealthy lifestyle for most of our life, we can't expect like one thing to shift everything, because we're out of balance due to our environment and our habits. We live in a toxic world. We're not meant to like live this way. We're eating like plastic food, like fake food. We're not moving our bodies. We're not getting like, even exposure to nature. We're out of alignment. We're not even following our purpose, our joy. We're not even really connecting with people anymore. We're actually the least connected people that have ever lived, even though we are more connected than ever before with electronics, but we are not like socially connected. And this is also why, depression rates have gone up. Chronic stress, obviously, like our body cannot function under this type of stress. Like it was not designed for that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So at the end of the day, we can't be surprised that we are the sickest we've ever been, because we are not living as human beings should be living. We're trying to like hack our way out of like, I guess, our natural habitat and like our natural needs, but this doesn't work. If you go against nature, we know what happens. Like it's bad news. So for me, my question is, I don't know if you see this a lot, but a lot of the time people will question natural approaches and seem to kind of like obviously go towards, first of all, conventional medicine and sort of like worship that approach. And then sort of like question things like herbs and things like that. Like, what if this is dangerous? You know what I mean? Do you see this
Yes,
a lot?
I do. And I think it just goes to show how much we're conditioned, because deaths from pharmaceuticals are astronomical, but people are scared to take a herb that grows in nature that's constituents perfectly match the biology of our body, And we've
Mm-hmm.
become so far removed from nature that I do find people are often, I don't know if scared is the right word, but they have an aversion to alternative medicines because, yeah, they think either that they don't work or that they're really dangerous, which is, opposite ends of the spectrum. You either think it works too well or it doesn't work at all. But at the same time, those thoughts kind of combine to form people's opinions of it. And so I always tell people that, our bodies are nature. There's no getting around that. We are designed to work with nature, from the foods that we eat that grow in nature on this earth, to the medicine that is grown, to the sun, to the air. Like we can't even exist without trees because of the gas exchange that happens between humans and trees. So to think otherwise, or to think that herbal medicine is dangerous, is highlighting a bigger problem, which is our disconnect from nature. But the caveat to that is, of course, there's times when herbs are good for you, times when they're not. There are some that are toxic in higher doses, which is why you always do want to work with a practitioner, just to make sure you are, getting the proper doses at the correct time, and that you are taking the right herbs.
And so what are these natural supplements and therapies that might be becoming illegal? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so a lot, I've only been practicing for about 4 years now. And in these 4 years, I've noticed that a lot of therapies, as soon as they get either clinical trials or a lot of traction that they are helpful, all of a sudden, they get banned in Canada and the States. And I guess even to precede that, like cannabis and psilocybin mushrooms are like two great examples. They are two of the most potent medicines in the world, and they have been illegal for how long. And now we are starting to see the legalization of cannabis, but that every part of the plant has medicinal effects that can be used from anywhere from anxiety to cancer, and psilocybin with mental health issues. But if we think about those, the anxiety, the mental health issues, cancer, those are those are pathologies that bring a lot of money to the pharmaceutical industry. And I hate to keep harping on the pharmaceutical industry, but that's why all of these really potent medicines start getting banned. And I can't recall where it was in the States, but for example, glutathione, supplement, very normal, run-of-the-mill supplement, much better in IVs. And a state made not the glutathione IV illegal, but they made the process to make it illegal. So you could still give the glutathione, but I think it was like they added oxygen. You had to add oxygen or something, which rendered it ineffective. And so, yeah, and even on a smaller scale than that, working at a health food store, I saw things that all of a sudden you just can't get in anymore. If anybody wants to look into the True Hope scandal, that's a Canadian company. There was a big thing on Marketplace, I believe. It was years and years ago. Health Canada banned it, and it's really good for mental health, and people were committing suicide, and they ended up having to bring it back in, but it was so effective. People were actually able to get off of their antipsychotics and antidepressants, and that created a lot of buzz, and then the next thing you know, it's illegal.
Wow.
Or you can't get it. Maybe illegal might be too strong of a word, but there definitely is regulations on supplements to that nature.
It'll be a lot more challenging to get our hands on it than just get a drug from our doctor, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you have to jump through some loopholes for sure. And even a lot of the supplements that we have in stores, they're obviously great, but the really high doses that you need for certain pathologies are just you can't get them.
And I don't know if you've also noticed, well, you probably have, but I've definitely noticed like a lot of censorship around health accounts, and even like what can be shared online, and even websites being shut down, especially like more of those bigger like alternative health accounts.
Yes, I have noticed that. And I've noticed, when you type in, when you're searching alternative stuff on Google, most of the stuff doesn't come up anymore, which is really unfortunate, because then, if people are wanting to explore natural therapies, or just expand their awareness on what they can do for their diagnosis or for a loved one, it's really hard for them to even find actual information. So it's kind of this like perpetual cycle that just it's like trying to crowd out the alternative medicine. There's so much effort to make it really hard to get certain supplements, to censor things. It's not in the best interest of the public, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, if we see this is happening, then our question is like, why? Like, why can't we look up natural remedies? Like, it doesn't really make sense, right? So have to kind of look at like the motives behind that. But obviously, again, speak up for yourself, advocate for yourself. But what would you say if somebody, has always seen their doctor and they're now fed up and they want to go more of like the natural route, but their doctor is resistant to natural approaches? Like, what would you say to those people?
Yeah, you just have to stand in your autonomy. Your doctor is great. And that's another thing I want to speak to, is that I believe doctors have great intentions. Medical doctors that operate within the conventional framework, they have great intentions. I don't think, they're being malicious or anything. It's just they're doing what they are taught, and there's just a whole other, it's one piece of the pie, there's a whole other sections. And so, yeah, your doctor is great and you respect them, you want to listen to them, but you are allowed to venture out. You are allowed to get second opinions. You are allowed to switch doctors and do your own research. And also when it comes to medicine, if you have a doctor that isn't supportive of your healing process, it's probably time to get a new doctor.
Yeah, because the whole point is we want you to get better, right? So does it really matter how you get there? In my opinion, I don't think so. I think like the path of least resistance is the best way to get there. But
Absolutely.
yeah,
And
again, as you mentioned, stand up for yourself.
yeah, and I mean, you know, if we're not even talking about nutraceuticals or like other alternative therapies, even if like just diet, I find that there's a lot of resistance to diet switches and using therapeutic diets to treat or manage various pathologies. And so if you have a doctor that discounts that, that's really not okay, and we need to be vocal about that. It's not enough to just, you know, say, okay, that's fine, like I'll go find a new doctor or what have you. You should be speaking up and being like, you know, you need to educate yourself. And yeah.
Hmm. And so, I mean, I don't really want to get into the COVID discussion specifically, but I think there is, you know, something to be said about just kind of worshiping vaccinations or like, again, pharmaceuticals and things like that, because at the end of the day, we have the most advanced technology and science, yet we have the sickest population, right? And obviously, when we are looking at COVID, more of the complications are coming from people with chronic diseases like diabetes, cardiovascular disease. So for me, I think we're really missing the mark in terms of, yeah, I mean, I talked about all of the ways that we're out of balance, but why are we not focusing on the basics? You know, like why are we not focusing on building healthy populations so that they can actually build like a strong immune system? Because that is our strongest defense. Like our body is meant to protect itself against external pathogens, viruses, bacteria, etc.
Yeah, and yeah, without getting too much into the COVID conversation, like you mentioned, it is important to note that in the entire conversation on COVID, there is no mention of the immune system, which, yes, that is, we are born with the immune system to help us fight pathogens. And with the new CDC update saying that 94% of the cases had at least 2.6 other morbidities, that's not to discount those deaths by any means, but it's highlighting that we are looking at this all wrong. It's not a pandemic that really, or it's not an illness that affects healthy people. And so we have to like dig deeper, peel back the layers. Why do we have so many people with comorbidities? These are not natural parts of aging. And yeah, we have the highest technology we've ever had and the most research dollars going into prevention and, you know, cures, quote unquote, for certain diseases. So why are they affecting so much of the population? Why are they rising? And why are they predicted to basically skyrocket over these next 20 years? And, you know, the science and the medicine spheres are very political, and even people with the best intentions to do the research, they are bound by the system. And you know, a lot of times like research dollars aren't given to more like natural approaches because we just want to be funding either pharmaceuticals or conventional ways, or, you know, it's discounted, you can't get your articles published and whatnot. And yeah, so just to continue to speak on that, I think we really need to look into why this is happening, not, and by looking into the why, we get the solution.
Mm-hmm. And as you mentioned again, I mean, a lot of the things that we can do, like even things like earthing, there's so much. I don't know if you watched the documentary Earthing, but it was like fascinating about how literally just grounding yourself on the grass or just like in nature can create such profound healing in the body. But things like that, like moving your body, getting out in nature, you know, yeah, nature therapy, deep breathing, stress management, meditation, all these sorts of things are free. So like how is that gonna profit anybody, right? So at the end of the day, you really don't, obviously there are different things that you can do as well, like healing modalities that will cost money, but there are so many things that are free that we can literally be doing each and every day.
Absolutely. And if you look at those free therapies, they kind of fall into this like woo-woo category where people are like, well, I'm gonna sit here and like alternate nostril breathe, or like what thing, like what kind of science fiction is that? But it's like these really basic practices that humans have evolved with, and most people don't breathe properly at all. not even like therapeutic breath. Most people's respiratory systems don't function correctly because we've been breathing poorly for so long. Most of us, like, well, maybe Vancouver and where I live in Mexico is quite different, but the average population, if you ask somebody when was the last time you were barefoot outside, most people probably can't answer that, where it's so fundamental to be connected to nature. And even the grounding, I love it, or the earthing, because if you actually look into the science of it, it like biologically explains like the physiology that happens when you do it, which I just love when nature and science come together.
Yeah, like there actually is the science now. And even like Joe Dispenza is a great, or Wim Hof are great examples of like actually merging the science with the quote unquote woo woo. And it's like, this is actually happening in the body. And it's not just physiologically, but then we also know like the nocebo effect, the placebo effect, all of those types of things where it's like when you actually start to believe you can heal, people have actually like healed chronic diseases from literally just shifting their belief system. So it's not like a bunch of woo woo like bullshit either. Because I know you and I, like, we are definitely into the woo woo, but we like to combine that with the science because we love science as well, right? And I think that definitely helps to improve the credibility as well when you have the science backing it. And now we do, which is amazing.
Yes, and I love science. I come from a research background and I have a great respect for science. I've just kind of got to this point in my life and my career where my mind is a little more open, and I understand that, science has its limitations, and the world and the earth and our bodies are so intelligent. There's no way that we're ever going to be able to measure everything with our like tiny little human brains.
I
You know
love
what I
that you mentioned that. Yeah, because we can't explain everything and we never will be able to. So there's
Yeah,
so much outside of ourselves that we literally have no power over. So yeah, I love that you mentioned that too. And
exactly.
so to end off, what would you say, like, okay, we've talked a lot about like what's wrong and like what we should lean towards, but like what can we do now? Like maybe somebody's feeling a little bit overwhelmed. They're like, okay, I don't know if, just sticking with my doctor for everything is the right approach. Maybe I should like merge out or like, investigate a bit more, do some research. Like, where do we even start? What can we do?
Yeah, great question. I think the first step is, it sounds a little corny, but just get to know yourself, because and yeah, like seek information, talk to people, reach out, Instagram, that kind of stuff is a great jumping off point, because the thing is, when you're switching, not even switching, when you're integrating your conventional approach with a natural approach, you're basically switching your belief system, and with that is going to come up a lot of things. And like we spoke about, the alternative stuff, it isn't just about taking nutraceuticals or diet. It is a lot about like that mindset shift. And so I really believe that if we just need to get to know ourselves and kind of be ready to make the switch and be open to it, because a lot of the stuff that we talk about in alternative medicine, sometimes it's like, what, like, that's weird. And so you really just have to have an open mind. And I think, yeah, it's just about seeking knowledge, read books, talk to people who have been through both conventional and alternative medical systems. A great place to start would be with a functional medicine doctor, because functional medicine doctors are that bridge between conventional and alternative. They operate like a conventional doctor does, but they incorporate all of the, lifestyle and nutrition bits that we in natural medicine do. So yeah, knowledge is power. It really is.
Yeah,
And then
I love it.
accept what comes through that.
Yeah, and I think it's really important as well to just be patient and compassionate too, because I'm still going through my own healing journey. It's been like, I don't even know how many years now, but it's like it never ends. It's not like a finish line either. It's a marathon, it's not a sprint, and it's just continuously learning about yourself, questioning things, and sometimes you're like, actually that didn't work for me. I'm going to try something else, and that's fine. It's just about, accepting that, because I think a lot of the time if we think that, okay, this thing is going to work and I'm going to be healed in the next, like, I don't know how many weeks, and then we get really disappointed because we had this expectations of like, again, the band-aid approach, and we really need to like be careful with that, because everything can really heal, but we just need to remember that it's like, it's not one thing that's going to make the biggest difference. It's going to be more of like the little things added on top of each other, compounded over time, right?
100%. And I think, that is also a big difference between the conventional and alternative approaches. And that, it's something that as practitioners, we need to educate our clients on that. And it is a process, but it's possible. And I mean, to say it's a process doesn't mean it's going to be years before you feel any changes, like you can start feeling better pretty much instantly. It's just that it is a commitment, and it's a lifestyle switch, because the thing with, say, the Band-Aid approach is you put a Band-Aid on and you still live your lifestyle the way you did before, but you've got a Band-Aid, so it's fine, But when you are actually fixing the root problem, you have to fix why it happened, and that is going to involve an entire lifestyle overhaul, which you're going to do over a long period of time in little baby steps. And yeah, I think that's a good point to tell people. And especially since we're so used to being in an instant gratification society where, everything is like boom, 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 done. It can be hard to like sit in that. But the result is you feel better and you feel amazing, and then opportunities open up for, everything in life.
Yeah, and I love that you mentioned that too, because I think a lot of the time it can be daunting and like even overwhelming, or like you don't like, it's harder, quote unquote, to shift your lifestyle. Like it's easier to order pizza and sit on the couch, like 100%, instead of like prepping your meals, cooking a meal. It doesn't have to be difficult to do that, but it's always going to be easier to do like the conventional kind of way of living. But the thing is, if we want to feel good in our bodies and live a different way of life, we need to do things differently from the norm. And that is just the reality of the game. We can't just be like, we can't like live like this, like we are living, with like the frankenfood and the like in exposure to natural sunlight and nature and just living indoors all the time, all of these sorts of things, processed foods, and expect to feel good. Like we have to be like letting go of one thing to accept the other. But then once you start feeling good, it's like a no-brainer. Like, why would I want to go back to those, that lifestyle if I feel like crap every day, can't get off the couch, etc. Right? Like, it's just, you actually become more energized and you actually start to implement these new habits that become automatic and easy. And it doesn't need to be that complicated anymore, but there can definitely be some resistance because people around you might be like, what are you doing? That's weird. But it's a choice at the end of the day. Do you want to feel your best, or do you want to feel your worst, or like feel, I guess, normal, kind of like going through life at this, what's the word? Kind of like mediocre level, right? Just like it's mediocre. It's like, I'm fine, kind of like normal. But there's so much more that's available to you. So it's kind of like at the end of the day, it is a choice, right?
That is 100%. We all choose what we are okay with, and we live the lives that we are okay with. And so exactly, it's the choice that we make. If you want to take the conventional approach and you're okay with that, that is your choice to make, But the choice is there. And yes, it can be harder, but it's always easy to stay in your comfort zone. So
nothing ever grows there, as we know.
No, it does not.
All right. Well, honestly, I feel like we could talk forever and ever and ever, but we are coming up to the end of the episode. So I'd love for you to share where we can find you, and if there is a way that people can work with you or connect with you if they want to learn more and kind of get in touch with you.
Yeah, I think Instagram is probably the best. My handle is Live Well with Lisa, and I have a link tree on there with my website. I don't have any services on my website. If you want to work with me, I just ask that you send an email, which is, plastered all over my social media and my website, to see if we are a good fit to work with each other. And for consultations, I do obviously make plans and stuff, but I also just offer informational consultations that basically it's just an hour where we chat and I just tell you your full spectrum of options that is available to you. And, if I can administer them, great. If not, I refer to people who can. Yeah.
I love it. Well, I'll put all the links in the show notes so we can come check you out. Highly recommend following her. And yeah, thank you so much for coming on. This was an amazing chat, and I'm really, really grateful that you're able to share with us today.
Yes, thank you so much. It was really fun, and I'm always happy to, do my part to expand awareness on what is out there.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. I hope you loved it. And as usual, if you do enjoy the episode, the podcast, I really appreciate a 5-star rating and review on iTunes. It really helps my podcast reach more people who need it and to spread my message. So I really appreciate your time for tuning in, and I can't wait to share what's coming next week.